Welcome to Gabylon.
Gabylon is an intellectual trademark.
What is Gabylon? Gabylon is a new system of science and chemistry. We are looking at the same scientific principles, but from a different perspective. So welcome back to Gabylon, and I'm going to be going over some more compounds and explaining different energies. First of all, how did I discover Gabylon? I'm a bit of a hacker, a really big hacker of ancient systems. Some of these ancient systems I studied were the Mayan calendar, Feng Shui, advanced Chinese astrology, Chinese emperors, Viking compass symbolism, and Indian astrology, as well as many others. I believe that they were just remnants covering up one true system. And because I had this unique ability to detect anomalies in data, I used it to discover what it was. My mind was also extremely open. It's my belief more accurate and ancient systems were kept hidden from us by those in power at the time. Because that they did this, there was a great divide between religions and science, and they separated and became further and further apart as humanity progressed. At university, I found that they were missing basic foundations, and I had to rise above the doctors and professors and literally put the crown on my head in order to break into it. This circular mindset I call crown. The periodic table used in mainstream science itself is like a religion and belief system too, as it concludes that science is about this rectangular shape when it isn't. Gabylon is a belief system and science system which is about an invisible force in nature all around us and is interpreted by the light, full colour spectrum, simple geometry and a basic pattern in nature. From observing science from this point of view, the same relationships are discovered and identified, yet from a more visual and colourful perspective. Because of the data generated in my research, I know it to be a true system, and the paper and research will be published soon. Ultimately is a new intellectual tool which I'm bestowing to humanity. In my last video released in August 2024, I spoke about how there is a distinct pattern in nature which follows a circular, supportive, clockwise motion which scientists haven't realised yet. Unlocked by Thales, the ancient Greek philosopher. Because of this clockwise circular principle, we were able to discover more dynamic relationships in nature which were triangular. However, I only showed one of those triangles, and that was the Red Volcano trilogy. Winds from Field 3 stripped the oldest rock at Cave 11 to help form a desert. Also, fields can sometimes turn into desert because of an increase in heat. Water from Ocean Rain 12 comes together with semi-arid crust 8 to form a forest. Icy waters from the mountain driven by gravity comes together with dead wood from the dead forest to form the right bacteria for a lake to flourish. And finally, you can see that all these trilogies point a certain specific direction. A scientific element can be referred to by number alone and not name. This is because the number of protons within a nucleus of an element is so unique that an element on the periodic table can be referred to or called by its number instead of its name. For example, carbon can be referred to as number 6. Or gold 79 can be referred to simply as 79. Currently, mainstream science elements are sorted in a rectangular arrangement, and I believe this is a false layout and not a true system.
Even the colours that they're using are based on personal choice and opinion and not on a special code like in Gabylon.
Instead, based on the Gabylon system, the atomic numbers of each element will form a circular motion.
Starting in a clockwise motion at hydrogen 1, in the northmost segment, the atomic numbers will spiral inwards until all of them will fit within a 12-segment circle.
This means we can allocate a scientific element to a colour on the Gabylon wheel.
And this is just by knowing the element's atomic number. In my last presentation, I talked about how elements symbolically or literally resonated with its own sector or coloured sector. There was also a connection to Nikola Tesla, the great inventor. Phosphorus 15 belongs to the third green wood segment, and it's very good for plants. However, it also belongs to the fire trilogy. Isn't it interesting that phosphorus 15 is a reactive non-metal? Calcium and oxygen belong to the 8th orange segment, and both these elements are abundant within the crust. Yet both these numbers belong to the forest trilogy, hinting that both these elements also are very good for plants. In fact, they are essential for plant growth. Chlorine 17 belongs to the 5th dead wood segment, which is about evaporation, yet it also belongs to the lake trilogy. And this is interesting because chlorine is widely used in pools. Silica 14 is located within the 2nd aqua beach segment. It is predominant within sedimentary rocks, which are made from water movement. Silica also belongs to the volcano trilogy, and this is interesting because silica is also a prime element in the formation of volcanic rocks. High levels of silica can also make a volcanic eruption more explosive.
Important groups identified in the more traditional rectangular periodic table are also identified geometrically within Gabylon. This is to do with the 4 trilogies.
The same geometric trilogies I showed you before in nature will come back to us with the scientific elements spiraling. They'll form the 4 main groups that you see on the periodic table. So the halogens automatically belong by atomic number to the blue trilogy that points north. The alkali metals belong to the yellow trilogy that points south. The alkaline earth metals belong to the wood trilogy that points east, and the noble gases belong to the red trilogy that points west. Keeping in mind that there will be 1 atomic number missing from each group, which acts as another connection which I won't go into for now. In other words, halogens point north, alkali metals point south, alkaline earth metals point east, and noble gases point west. Mainstream chemistry metallic character increases from right to left and up to down. However, it isn't easy to remember as it doesn't sync up with 3-dimensional Earth.
Instead, with Gabylon, metallic elements increase the deeper you go, and this is easy to remember because it follows the same pattern with 3-dimensional Earth. Also, the further you move out of the circle, elements become lighter, more gaseous, less metallic, more reactive, and also a higher chance for solubility. This is the same with three-dimensional Earth, whereas the further you move out towards the surface of the planet, elements will become lighter, they'll move around a lot more, they'll also be less metallic.
Some Earth system activities and trends with the weather can be predicted with Gabylon, as it's like a clock in time combined with three-dimensional Earth. This is the overlapping principle. Lake One or ocean supports beaches, which supports the formation of dry land, which supports forests, which supports bogs or swamps, which supports formation of deserts. All these biomes also represent Earth systems, river tide systems, subduction plate zones, horizontal layering systems, root systems, decaying systems, and mantle systems. Then we have 2020 starting at Lake 1, 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024, and 2025 brought us to the mantle system, so we can easily make a prediction and say, well, 2025 there could be more earthquakes, in which there is. Lake 1 always shows us when the reset years are, so we can see here that 2020 was a reset year, and we all know this because of the pandemic. We can also rewind back in time to find out when the last reset year was, and that was 2008. In 2025, we're in opposition to fire and water in the weather. We had all those California bushfires. We can also rewind back in time to find out when the last one of these occurred, and that was 2019. That was the year we had the Amazon bushfires and the Australian bushfires. Now we are just looking at commonly occurring compounds. Sulfur and oxygen belong to the same trilogy, the forest trilogy. So it's easy to understand why these two elements are coming together to form commonly occurring compounds such as sulfate, sulfite, and thiosulfate. Gabylon also hints to us that these two elements have a strong attraction because they belong to the two outer rings on the Gabylon wheel. It's a double attraction, because both elements belong to the same trilogy and to two rings close to each other. This simple triangular diagram shows the connection between forests and clean oxygen production. Commonly occurring compounds such as nitrate, cyanide, cyanate, acetate, thiocyanate, and carbonate all have an emphasis to the fire fan because oxygen, nitrogen, and carbon are making up a significant percentage in their formulas. While such compounds belong to different trilogies, these compounds have a strong emphasis to the fire fan due to the percentage in the formula. So with these commonly occurring compounds, it's another double attraction to do with the fire fan and the same ring. As we move through each biome in a successive supportive clockwise motion, we reach the fire segments, which are about clean air and atmosphere, such as deserts and dunes. It's interesting that, out of coincidence, nitrogen and oxygen sit exactly over these segments, making up a large component of air itself. Did Gabylon hint to us this connection? I leave that up to you to decide. Also, as we continue our clockwise journey, we move away from the oxygen and nitrogen on the Gabylon wheel and head to the mountains. This means we can hypothesize that mountains in high altitude will be depleted in these two elements as we moved away from them and left them. In fact, it took scientists many decades to figure this out about high altitude. Yet in Gabylon, you only had to observe this simple relationship to come to a much quicker hypothesis. Some of the most reactive compounds known to the military belong to the fire fan as a high percent. These are RDX, PETN, TNT, azeroazide and octanitrocubane.
Some compounds with a fire fan aren't reactive and other compounds with a fire fan are reactive. How do we know the difference between the two?
It's to do with special count.
Ammonia is a high-class member of the reactivity solubility group. That's because both of its elements sit on the capstone of each trilogy.
Both these elements also share the same ring.
Some compounds which belong to this group won't be soluble in water because the heavy metallic score count will be superior.
The chlorates belong to the same energy of storage, and they also belong to two rings nearby. In all, commonly occurring compounds showed a triangular relationship, a fan relationship, a power of opposition relationship like we saw with ammonia, or a relationship where they shared the same energies like we saw with chlorates.
Hans Norbert Adams discovered fulminating gold with a combination of these two compounds, gold ammonia nitrate and sodium amine.
Gold ammonia nitrate belongs to the reactivity group and fire fan. It looks like this. Sodium amine also belongs to the reactivity group. Basically, in this reaction, it's adding value to the reactivity group and making it stronger with a higher count, and the fire trilogy becomes superior with a score of 17. I reveal these counts later.
Carbonate belongs to the adhesive group, which is the red and green trilogy coming together to form a horizontal shaped diamond. Most carbonates are insoluble in water, and it's easy to see why. A high percent of the rock-forming minerals I translated in my research also belong to the adhesive group. And this makes sense because most rock...
Because of the colour code unique to Gabylon elements, you can come to a quick hypothesis when comparing different compounds.
Iron pentacarbonyl is a liquid compound, but we can hint it may be insoluble in water as it belongs to the adhesive group. Lithium hydroxide is well known for its reactivity. Most of its formula belongs to the reactivity group. With cyanuric acid, there is a visual emphasis to light and water. This compound prevents chlorine in pools from being damaged by light, which is really interesting. Iron perchlorate is a lot more soluble in water as its adhesive group score is a lot lower at 13. Almost the same as the Lake trilogy, which is at 14, whereas iron naphthalate is hardly soluble in water at all as its adhesive group score is at 30. These counts I reveal later. Translating Hellerndite formula to Gabylon, not only does oxygen have a count of 72, but silica has a count of 72, and so does aluminium have a count of 72.
Whereas with the mainstream formula, you can only see oxygen with a count of 72. Again, as said, these counts I reveal later. Arsenic trisulfide isn't soluble in water because it's a heavy metal combined with the half member of the adhesive group. Actinamide trifluoride is soluble in water because it belongs to the reactivity solubility group, or the vertical shaped diamond. Actinamide trioxide isn't soluble in water because it's a heavy metal combined with a half member of the adhesive group. Actinamide trichloride is soluble in water because it belongs fully to the reactivity solubility group. Barium fluoride, slightly soluble in water, and barium ferrite, which is completely insoluble in water as it belongs to the adhesive group. Compounds like neptunocene, which had a strong emphasis to the Blue Lake trilogy, was still not soluble in water. This is because this compound belonged to the Red Mountain trilogy in combination with a heavy metal containing an incredibly high atomic number range. With ammonium molybdenate, there is no particular emphasis to the adhesive group or the solubility group because it belongs to every trilogy in Gabylon. It belongs to all 4 trilogies. However, with a certain count, you can find out that the solubility or reactivity group, the vertical shaped diamond, is slightly more superior in count with the 10 over the 8. Therefore, one could assume that there is higher chance for solubility. Molybdenum, even though a heavy metal like neptunium, doesn't have the very high atomic number range, so we don't have to worry about it as much in affecting solubility. During my research of translating 1,000 inorganic compounds, I discovered that compounds which were violent or vigorous in water often belong to the water or fire trilogy. Let's look at 50 examples. Nitrosyl sulfuric acid, niobium tetrachloride, actinamide pentachloride, tellurium tetrabromide, actinamide pentafluoride, lithium tetrachloroaluminate, boron trichloride, calcium cyanamide, aluminium chloride. Think like a king or queen and discover the reactivity group. Compounds you saw were reacting vigorously or violently in water. Most of them belong to this group, however some of them belong to other trilogies. Nevertheless, there was an emphasis to this vertical shaped diamond. And if you didn't believe in the energy of growth, storage and change, how is it the suggesting states of matter within the formulas of compounds? With rock-forming minerals, there was an emphasis to storage within the formula. With gases, there was an emphasis to growth and travel within the formulas. These patterns to do with states of matter become less apparent with elements which drive deeper within the Gabylon wheel. This is because the metallic circle of depth states that the deeper you move in towards the circle, elements will become more solid-like.
Gabylon showed us the four most important environments in nature with geometry. The same geometry showed us where the noble gases, alkali metals, alkaline earth metals, and halogens were on the periodic circle. Now those four main groups are going to help us do chemical reactions with 10 simple laws. This is to do with 10 laws on chemical reactions I discovered, based on a colour code and geometry.
Three-dimensional perspective, you have to read my book, Gabylon, Code and Code.